This is the new 2025 Cadillac Optiq, and it's a fully electric midsize SUV. It's also surprisingly good, with decent performance, good range, and reasonable pricing. I say surprisingly good because other General Motors electric SUVs haven't exactly been big hits, but there's a lot to like here, and today I'm going to review the Optiq and show you all of its quirks and features. Before we get started, are you ready for your next cool car? Sell your enthusiast car on Cars and Bids. Trading in your car to dealers means you aren't getting market value for your car, leaving you with less cash for your next fun car. Just look at our recent sales of these cool cars compared to current trade-in value. This is a trade-in offer, and this was the Cars and Bids result. This is a trade-in offer, and this was the Cars and Bids result. This is the trade-in offer, and this is the Cars and Bids result. Get started now on carsandbids.com. Sell on Cars and Bids and join the best community to sell your enthusiast car. All right, time for the quirks and features of the Cadillac Optiq, which, like I said, brand new, fully electric luxury SUV. It's sort of on the small end of the midsize SUV segment. It's about 5 inches shorter than a BMW X5 or a Mercedes-Benz GLE, two-row seating, small midsize, the Optiq. And in fact, the name itself, Optiq, is a bit of a quirk. First off, it's not pronounced Optiq, even though I've wanted to do that the whole time I've been around this car. It is in fact Optiq, and it fits in with Cadillac's naming pattern of its electric vehicles, all of which end in IQ. There's also the Lyriq. There's also the Vistiq, so like Vista, but Vistiq. That's a larger midsize electric SUV from Cadillac, 3 rows, for like the size of an Audi Q7. Then there's the Celestiq, which is their giant luxury sedan thing. And this is how they're naming their electric cars, except there's an electric version of the Escalade. And Escalade doesn't end in IQ. And since everybody knows the Escalade name, they didn't want to change it, so they just call it the Escalade IQ. So you have Lyriq, Optiq, Vistiq, Celestiq, and Escalade IQ. Those are the names. Now, even more unusual than the name itself is this badge on the back that reads 500E4. What do you think this means? Whatever you think it means, you are wrong. The E stands for electric. That's pretty easy. The 4, which is small, it's like a lowercase 4, that means all-wheel drive. And in fact, all of the Optiq models come standard with all-wheel drive, which is pretty nice. The 500, that's the weird one. This is the vehicle's torque output in Newton meters. Not horsepower, not torque in pound-feet, which is what we use here in the States, the Optiq's primary market. Instead, torque in Newton meters, which nobody here in the US uses. 500E4. One of the more unusual badges I've seen on a vehicle. And since we're back here talking quirks, well, there are quite a bit more to discuss on this vehicle. Probably most prominently in the rear is the brake light situation. The tail light in back is divided into 2 giant vertical tail lights on either side. And I was thinking that like one of them was the turn signal, one of them was the brake light. That's not the case. When you put on the turn signal in this car, you get an absolutely massive 2-piece turn signal, which is signaling to everyone that you're turning, including people in space. This has to be the largest, brightest turn signal in the car industry. Both units of taillight are used for it. It is definitely an odd decision, and there's more odd quirks back here. Like, for example, the third brake light, which is in the center but vertically aligned rather than horizontal like in basically every other car. That is certainly a bit of an interesting, distinctive touch of the electric Cadillacs. And another interesting quirk back here is the Cadillac logo on the taillight. Not just a logo telling you it's a Cadillac, but instead it has a function. You push it and that automatically pops open the tailgate and it raises up. That is your tailgate release, sort of cleverly integrated instead of a boring electronic popper above the license plate. And the Cadillac logo has a lot of different functions on this vehicle. You go around to the front fender, you can see the Cadillac logo mounted on the charge port door. You press that to open up the charge port. So press Cadillac logos to to open stuff. Up front, the Cadillac logo actually lights up when you're driving around. It's lit, and it's mounted on this grille, which is also partially lit up itself. Now, a grille is not actually necessary on an electric car. You don't need the airflow through the grille into the engine, but they keep it there for style. And it's worth pointing out that some of the rest of this stylistic grille also lights up, but not all of it. They've chosen sections to light up and sections not to light up, and the Cadillac logo is part of the area that lights up. Now, speaking of lighting, when you walk up to the car, like so many other new vehicles, press the unlock button, the front lights do a little dance to welcome you and greet you and say that it's happy to see you returning to your Optiq. It's the same deal in back. You walk up, you press unlock, and the rear lights also have a little dance, a little lighting sequence that they do to make you feel welcomed and confirm that the car has seen you and it's ready to start going. As for other unusual quirks, one of the strangest about this entire vehicle, these lines on the side in the rear 3/4 area, they're just lines. They're purely there for style. They do not have a functional purpose. I think they maybe try to make it look sportier. I'm not really entirely sure what they do, but there are lines on the side of the Optiq, and that's just the situation. Also kind of quirky is the door handles. A lot of cars have weird pop-out door handles, and this is definitely one of them. You can see they're kind of flush with the body right now, but when you press the button, they pop out sort of rear hinged, not like you'd expect, and then you pull on the door handle and you can open up the door. Very different from your typical door handles. This car certainly has a lot of interesting quirks on the outside, although to me its biggest drawback is also on the outside, which is it looks quite a bit like the Chevy Equinox EV on which it's based. The Equinox EV shares the same platform architecture, and the general profile is pretty similar. And I was actually driving this yesterday, and Equinox EV went past. I saw the two right next to each other. They look surprisingly similar, sort of disappointingly similar, considering obviously this is the luxury, more expensive version. You don't really want it looking like the mainstream plebeian model, but it does. Now, before I go inside and show you all of the interior quirks and features, and there are quite a few, let's go through some numbers. First off, range. About 300 miles of fully electric range, which is decent, competitive. Horsepower is also around 300, and the result is 0 to 60 in the mid 5-second range. That's pretty quick for a midsize SUV, like an X5 or a Mercedes-Benz GLE, but for an electric vehicle, it's only about average. The real benefit, the standout of this car, is its price point. The Optiq starts around $56,000, despite being in the same segment, about the same size as rivals like the Polestar 3 and the BMW iX, both of which cost significantly more. Now, the Cadillac brand might not be as strong, the interior might not be as nice, but this car is a pretty good bargain compared to rival EV luxury SUVs. So, next we climb inside, but before we do that, I draw your attention to one more interesting Cadillac logo. This one is placed on the dashboard, on the back side of the center screen, and it lights up when you unlock the doors, serving as sort of a beacon from the interior that you're getting into a Cadillac, as if the exterior stuff wasn't quite enough. So let's climb in and see what's going on. Now, once you climb inside the Optiq, you quickly discover there are a lot of interesting quirks and features in here, just like outside, starting with this rather unusual cloth material. You first see it on the top of the door panel. It certainly is not leather. It's definitely kind of an interesting, distinctive cloth. They put it there. They also put it on the dashboard. You can see here on the passenger side, and they put it here in the center console. But then the weirdest part of this is that they've also created a matching, similar glossy trim that's supposed to look like the cloth material, but it's actually glossy plastic just next to the cloth material that looks like cloth. You don't often see glossy plastic mimicking cloth, but that's exactly what we have here on the Optiq. Certainly strange. Now, this car also has a lot of unusual trim, sort of like those weird lines on the outside, and you can most prominently see that here in the center. You have these kind of lines on this plastic piece, and then there's a bunch of different dots. It's intended to look cool and be a little distinctive, but these dots are actually lighted, and when the lights are on, you're in a dark dark space, you can see this isn't just trim, it's lighted trim, which looks especially interesting and quirky and distinctive. But beyond some of the weird materials and trim touches, the biggest news in this interior is undoubtedly the large curved screen area that sits on the dashboard, curving all the way from one side of the car way over to the passenger side, and it incorporates several different screens. Obviously, in the center, you have your infotainment screen, which works fantastically. I really like it. It's really responsive to the touch. It's really intuitive, easy to figure out. It all works great, and it's especially impressive considering Cadillac models do not have Apple CarPlay. You don't get that benefit, but this integration, frankly, is just as easy, and it includes a lot of familiar apps like Google Maps, Google Assistant, Amazon Music, Spotify, and various others. So a really well done infotainment system even without Apple CarPlay, and I suspect people with this car won't miss CarPlay as much as they might think when they use this system. One interesting thing about this infotainment screen is that it incorporates the glove box control. This little button on the bottom, you press that and that's how you open up the glove box. Push it and it opens. You don't have a traditional latch handle on the glove box. Instead, you do it in the screen. Fortunately, the climate controls are not integrated into the screen, which is a bit of a surprise. The glove box controls in the screen, but the climate controls have their own separate piece. You can see down here, all of the climate controls are separate from the screen, use their own distinct switches that you can use to turn on climate control, change air temperature placement, all that stuff. So you don't have to go into any screen menus to do that. Now, speaking of the screen, we then move from the center screen onto the gauge cluster screen, which is also wonderful. I love this gauge cluster screen, very configurable to show a wide variety of stuff. You can get a full screen map in there, you can get the music, whatever you're listening to, all sorts of vehicle information, all fully configurable and large and full color and high resolution. This is a very good high quality screen setup in this car. And the interesting thing about this gauge screen is that it's controlled with a touchscreen to the left of the gauge screen. There's another touchscreen over here, a small one, and you can use this to configure what's showing up in your gauge screen and also what's showing up in your heads-up display projected onto the windshield, and also you can use it to turn on or off the headlights. There's no traditional switch for turning on or off the headlights. Instead, you have it integrated into this little touchscreen pad over to the left, which is kind of unusual. Now, on the subject of tech features in this car, it's worth pointing out that this Optiq has Cadillac's wonderful Super Cruise system, which is essentially hands-free driving on mapped roads. And mapped roads are a lot of them. Basically, a lot of the interstates and highways in the United States are mapped, and you can be totally hands-free as long as you're looking forward in a lot of situations. It's quite an impressive system. This car also comes with a rear camera screen, as you can see. Right now, it's a camera projecting what's behind me, but if I flip this switch, it goes back to being a mirror. But if you don't want it to be a mirror, the camera is, in my opinion, a lot safer and better integrated, better quality. You can see what's behind you, and you don't have a traditional rear view mirror. If you don't want one, you can just use a screen instead, which is great. Also on the subject of tech, worth pointing out that the center infotainment system does not have to be controlled by touch if you don't want. I'm not sure why someone wouldn't want to use it as a touchscreen, but if you don't, there are separate controls here in the center console mounted on the glossy cloth. Then you could use this Cadillac controller to move around the screen and make a selection, tap down to pick what you want. And then there's also this touchpad with various different functions on there, the navigation map, music, go home, all that stuff can control the infotainment screen, again, if you don't want to use it as a touchscreen. Now, one rather interesting thing about this car, kind of unusual, there is no start-stop button for the vehicle itself. So you get inside with the key in your pocket, the car recognizes you, you put your foot on the brake, and then it starts up. And that's how it knows to be ready to start going. When you want to get out and leave, you just take your foot off the brake, put the car in park, and it starts to shut down. You lock the door and it turns off. There is no button to start or stop the car. I'm not the biggest fan of that. I think most people prefer a button. And the strange thing is there is a button for the climate controls. If you want to turn on or off the climate controls, you have to press a start-stop button, even though most other cars, you can just start messing with the functions and it'll do what you want. But here, there is an on-off button for the climate controls controls, but not the vehicle itself, which is a little bit of odd thinking, but it's General Motors. And next we move on to the back seat in the Optiq, which is shockingly large. For a vehicle its size, on the small end of the midsize SUV segment, there is a lot of space back here. Even as a tall adult with the front seat positioned where I would sit, I have no trouble getting comfortable back here. Headroom, legroom, knee room, all of it. And that's one of the benefits of an electric car. With no giant engine up front, it allows Cadillac to pull the interior, make it a little bit longer, stretch it out a little bit for more interior space, and that means a lot of good backseat space. This could totally be used as a family car if you don't need 3-row seating. Since this is 2-row only, there is definitely enough space for kids, car seats, etc. in the back. And there's also some nice convenience features back here. You have rear seat climate vents, which you don't always see in vehicles at this price point or in this class. You also have rear heated seats, which is a nice comfort touch, and you have rear seat USB-C ports, 2 of them for charging devices, but most importantly, you also have a rear seat household charge port. You open up this, there's your household charge port back here, so you can plug in whatever you want to charge it in back, which is really nice to see. That's a really great convenience feature. Not all cars have that integrated, and it's nice to see it in here. Next up, a couple of other interesting things in back. For one, there is no central hump that takes up space, footroom or legroom, from a central rear passenger. A lot of cars have that, but this one doesn't because it's an electric vehicle. The motors are front and rear. You don't need a drive shaft connecting them like you do in gasoline-powered cars with a combustion engine, and so there is full floor space back here for center rear passengers to sit, and that adds some extra practicality as well, since this middle seat is more usable than in a lot of other cars. Another interesting quirk sitting in the back, if you look all the way to your side, you can see some of those lines that are mounted on the side of the car. You can see them through the back, and remember that your car is a little weird. And finally, let's talk cargo and cargo space. To get into the cargo area, like I mentioned, you push your Cadillac logo back here, and the tailgate opens up, and you can see the cargo area in the Optiq is actually pretty big. You got a decent sized space back here. Sort of a similar situation with those rear seats. Having no engine allows them to get more interior space, which is a good job of packaging this car to maximize space. And if you want even more space, you lift up the floor and you can see there's extra space down here, and it goes pretty deep. So you can even get like a briefcase down here if you don't want it rolling around in the back, or if you want to hide it a little bit more. That's a pretty cool, nifty little extra trick in the cargo area. Now, a couple of demerits in the cargo area. For one, you don't have any latches back here that you can use to drop the rear seats. So if you want more space, the only way to do it is to go around to the seats themselves and manually unlock them on each side. A little bit annoying, not a big deal, but worth pointing out. You also have a 12-volt power supply back here, a cigarette lighter style charger, but there's no household style charger in the cargo area. Now, I mentioned earlier you do have household power in the rear seats, and honestly, that itself is a wonderful feature. It'd be nice to have it back here as well, but even the fact that there's just one household charger is a great thing. My only real complaint about the cargo area is the button on the tailgate to close it. There's a button you press, closes the tailgate, but you don't have a separate button back here that will close the tailgate and lock the car. So many other SUVs have that. You close the tailgate, you don't have to wait around for it to close before you have to manually lock it. Instead, there's one button that does it all. For some reason, that's been omitted here, and that's kind of disappointing. Now, speaking of cargo space, if you want more cargo space, you open up the front trunk. You pull this latch in the driver's footwell, you open it up, and you can see, well, it's not a front trunk at all. There is actually no additional cargo space up here. It's all mechanical components, just like you would have in a gasoline-powered car. Now, interestingly, when I go to press launches and talk to automakers, they tell me that these front trunks in electric vehicles are almost always not actually used by people. So I suspect people won't really care that there isn't a front trunk, but I think people like the idea that they have extra storage. They gave up a gasoline engine, they should get something for it, but in this car, they don't. They just have the mechanical. All of your storage has to be done inside. Anyway, that's the Optiq, the quirks and features. Now it's time to get it out on the road and see how this drives. All right, driving the Cadillac Optiq and resisting the urge every time I say the name of this car to say Optiq. But no, it's the Optiq. So On the road, how does this drive? I already run over the acceleration time, 0 to 60 in like the 5s. It actually feels to me a little bit quicker than that. It feels relatively quick, but it's not on the level of like the crazy fast electric cars, which so many are these days. Nonetheless, lots to like about the interior of this vehicle. It's very comfortable in here, very nice. I wouldn't say it necessarily stands out for any one like crazy thing. It's not incredibly luxurious. The road noise, the tire noise, it's fine. Exactly what I'd expect at this price point. Same deal with, you know, wind noise, etc. There's nothing particularly compelling about it other than it delivers a pretty good product for the price point. I was in the electric Audi Q6, SQ6, which I thought was fantastic. I was in the Polestar 3, love that. But those cars are considerably more expensive than this. And this delivers a pretty similar, if you look on paper, a pretty similar overall experience for less money. To me, one drawback of this car is that it's based on the Chevy Equinox EV and kind of looks on the outside like the Equinox EV. But I will say on the inside, it's totally not. On the inside, it's very clearly something different, something special, something more premium. I wouldn't get in this car and assume that there was any sort of Chevy at the entry-level basis of this car. The ride is nice and smooth. It's not like super ultra luxury car smooth. It's exactly what you'd expect at this price point smooth, $65,000 car smooth. It's nice. It drives well, but it's not like, you know, crazy supple or anything like that. Same deal again, road noise, wind noise, turners, that stuff is kind of normal for the class. Again, nothing crazy stand out here, including acceleration, including handling. It's just like a good, well-rounded, well put together car, and its value proposition is particularly compelling. One thing I will say about this car that is a little bit disappointing to me is the rear view mirrors. The side mirrors are small. They're unusually small. It feels like hampers visibility a little bit. I also feel like the seat is maybe a little bit over bolstered, especially in the back. It's difficult to exactly position the seat where I want to sit because the bottom back of the bolster is kind of a little far, almost like there's too much lumbar. But these are minor complaints, and honestly, other cars have minor stuff like that too. I think generally speaking in this car, there really is a lot to like. It's a nice car. It drives well, smooth ride, feels good, accelerates reasonably well. I mean, it's pretty much what you'd expect at this price point for a vehicle like this. I think a lot of the more interesting, more unusual selling points of this car come from kind of all the quirks I showed you before, the interior materials, various other stuff. That's kind of where this car like makes its you know, compelling. This is why we're different. This is why we're interesting. But from a driving perspective, really feels a lot like other electric, you know, luxury SUVs, which I think is a good thing, especially considering that it's cheaper than a lot of those cars. Drive this compared to Polestar 3, etc. I don't necessarily feel that this is dramatically worse considering it's a lot cheaper. In fact, I think they're very, very similar in terms of quality, driving experience, etc. I also wouldn't say that this car handles particularly impressively. It handles fine, it's predictable, it's easy, but I wouldn't say it darts around or is particularly sporty or anything like that. My presumption is they probably will make a high-performance V version of this car. It's mostly just software and some you know, cosmetic upgrades, maybe some suspension, and that could probably be more fun because the sizing is right for a performance version of this. Compared to the Lyriq and the Vistiq, this is a little bit smaller and a little bit more sort of you can toss it around kind of sized, but it doesn't feel like we're at that point with this particular one. This is just sort of more an everyman driver type car that doesn't have, you know, that level of performance. Overall though, I mean, not much to say about the driving experience of the Optiq. Like so many EV luxury SUVs, it you know, the drive is distinguished. It used to be distinguished by the powertrain and the engine note and the way it felt on the road. You know, that with EVs, that sort of stuff kind of diminishes a little bit, and so you're left separating it with things like brand name and cool features. And this car delivers cool features, and then some people really do like the Cadillac brand, including me. But I think the driving experience is just as expected, which is good. I mean, I think that EV SUVs that don't drive well, it's a big demerit because there are so many that do drive well. But I think that this is right up there with any of the other rivals. Good seating position too. You're sitting up high. I don't see why this is any worse than vehicles in its class, including ones that cost significantly more. And so that's the new 2025 Cadillac Optiq. Relative to rivals like the new Polestar 3 and the Audi SQ6 e-tron, this is a pretty good vehicle. Reasonable pricing, good range, good performance. There's a lot to like. The question is whether EV buyers will be interested in the Cadillac brand, or whether people will be interested in this at all, an electric luxury SUV, as the market seems to be shifting away from EVs. Regardless, now it's time to give the Optiq a DOUGSCORE. And the DOUGSCORE is here, 56 out of 100, which places the Optiq here against similar crossovers, most of which are electric. It's about the middle of the pack, and honestly, that's how I feel about the Optiq. It's mostly okay, not great in any one particular area, good enough to be competitive, but not exactly a standout. Nonetheless, it can be a good buy if you find one for a good enough deal, though I personally would go for a Model Y on value, a Macan EV for performance or tech, and an Audi SQ6 e-tron if you want the best combination of all of it.